Hello everybody, I'm back with our lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified family coach, and I work with teenagers and young adults, helping them be self-confident. And I work with educational institutions and companies supporting parents in the workplace. And as you know, every week I do lives where I interview different experts who share how they make a difference in people's lives. And today I'm super excited to be talking with Professor Dr. Ger. Professor Dr. Ger, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on. Please, can you tell us about yourself?
Oh, wow. It's really good to be there. I'm very sad that I'm not with you in Dubai, but I am in very rainy and very grey Sheffield in the north of England. But there we are. We can't all be winners all the time. So I'm Graus, and I am, as I kind of say, I'm a dad of three. I'm a dog walker of two, and I'm a husband of one. And apart from that, I was actively a teacher. I don't think you ever lose that. I think you always stays with you one way or the other. I grew up in the Netherlands. I moved to the UK because of a lack of jobs in the Netherlands, because I became a German teacher, and I became a German teacher of my German teacher, and who I loved. And then I moved to England, and was going to come for 1 year, and that's now 35 or whatever it is years.
Wow.
And so I've lived longer in England than I've lived in the Netherlands, but I still feel quite Dutch, certainly when the football's on. And so I was a German teacher. I moved to this country, and then discovered really quickly in this wonderful school in Norwich where I worked, Averham High School. I discovered very quickly that the attitude that young people and their parents and the communities had towards learning languages was, why bother? Because everybody in the world speaks English anyway. So one of the very first things I did was I set up a German exchange. We used to take literally dozens and dozens of young people, 13, 14, even 11-year-olds, to 16-year-olds. We used to take them on exchanges where they stay in families for 2 weeks, and then the German youngsters would come back. And quite quickly, we developed, I developed work experience during the summer holidays where they could go for 4 or 5 weeks when they were 15 or older, and they would again live with families and then go and do work experience. And the aim always was that wherever they were in Germany, the German people, our German friends, would not speak English with them. They'd speak German, and the same would happen when the German friends came to England. So in a sense, it gave them purpose. Okay. And I think we'll probably come back to purpose. I then moved onto a very large school to become head of faculty in a school in Hull in the north of England, and then became languages advisor for the city of Manchester, introducing languages into all primary schools in Manchester and setting up European school links for every school in Manchester so that they too could take their youngsters at a much younger age to Germany. Okay. Then kind of the dark period in my professional life, I became an inspector and joined Ofsted, but quite quickly Darth Vader turned into Anakin Skywalker again, and I became education director of two what were called education action zones in the south of Manchester, near Manchester Airport. The area is known as Wythenshawe. It's a pretty disadvantaged area, and it is where the footballer Marcus Rashford comes from, which is probably where Wythenshawe is probably more known for now than anything. Yeah. Marcus Rashford was at Button Lane Primary School when I was education director in Wythenshawe, so I take unashamedly all the credit for everything he's done brilliantly. And then I moved from, I got frustrated and fed up, I suppose, professionally, with the constant pressures that government laid upon schools and the narrowing of the curriculum and the kind of teach and test regimes that came in through inspection. So I focused then from then onwards on children and young people learning out of school. So I became the founding chief executive of the Children's University, which was all about experiences for young people that would be accredited. And to my amazement, within 7 years, that small acorn was a pretty big tree across 11 countries globally. I was then invited to become the head of education for Kidzania London, and very quickly after that was invited to be the first global education director for Kidzania globally.
Wow.
And now
Okay.
kind of advise companies and governments and work with schools and do all sorts of things. So that's kind of where
Amazing.
no straight lines.
Amazing, Dr. Ger. You've got such a wealth of experience and knowledge, and that's why I'm so excited to talk to you today. You chose the title, All Grown-Ups Were Once Children, but Only Few of Them Remember It. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what made you choose that title and what does it mean?
Well, firstly, it's a phrase, it's a quote from my favorite book ever, which is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And I think it should be made mandatory for everybody in the world to read that book.
Okay.
And it's a quote that if you work with children, if you engage with children, then it's a quote that you should think about, because we as adults we have a number of nasty habits, and one of them is that we very quickly look at the negative, and we also look down at youngsters, if that's the right way of putting it, and we condemn at times their behaviors and their being, and we tell them very puritanically what they should do and shouldn't do. And actually, when you then turn around and say, so what were you like then when you were 12? Or what were you like then when you were 14? Then it's a reminder of people. One is that they once were that age. They didn't just pop up as grown-ups.
Yes.
And that they too went through the growing pains that we all go through. And we do forget that. And I always use that example. There is, in a park in London, it's called a children's park. I shan't name who owns it. It's a children's park, and there's a sign that says children's park. And then it tells the children everything they're not allowed to do whilst they're in the park. So no board games, and no cycling, and no running, and no dogs, and no games. And you kind of think, well, what are they meant to be doing there then, really? Or that they're meant to be behaving like grown-ups. Now I understand. And so I think that's where that comes from. And I genuinely think that if we do that, we put ourselves, empathy is a great thing, isn't it? If we put ourselves in the shoes of our little people, then we understand better, and we can talk better. And actually, we probably will be better parents for that. And that isn't a license to go soft or whatever upsets people. But there is a realism. There is a realism that when you're 14, you sometimes don't want to go to school. And when you're 15 and you've fallen madly in love, then the last thing that's on your mind is your maths homework. And
no, definitely. I agree with everything you're saying. But why do you think some adults do forget that they were once children? Because I mean, I always remember being a teenager. I don't know if it's different if you had like significant things happen in your childhood.
Maybe I think we get so drawn in this flow of life, don't we? And every stage that we're in life has the world has preconceived ideas of what that should be like, and we're all guilty of those stereotypes, and we apply those stereotypes, I think to ourselves. I'll tell you a funny story. But when I worked in my very first school in Norwich, I lived in the city centre in Norwich. It was a long time ago, and so every Saturday when I left my flat and I would walk into the city centre, there would be most of the children of my school, right, outside CNAs, and
CNA,
and they would look at me with amazement and go, sir, what are you doing here? And this, that, and the other. And I used to say to them, I said, Mrs. Daines is the name of the head teacher. I said, Mrs. Daines doesn't lock us in a cupboard on a Friday evening, and then let us out again on a Monday. We are people. And that story kind of reminds me quite often about how we are. So when we reach certain stages in life, I think we automatically almost start to behave in certain ways, right? So when you're a student at university, you behave in a certain way because there are expectations around you. When you are then a grown-up and you're earning your own money, you have to buy your own house and you do this, and then you have children. And then when you have children, you then bring them up in maybe in the way that you see things by then. So I think there is nobody deliberately going, I'm not going to forget what it was like to when I was.
It's just.
But I think as the processes go through, I think that's kind of what happens.
Do you think you just follow?
Well,
You just,
and then you can compare the stories, can't you? And you can see where, if you then reflect on that and talk to other people about this, then for better or for worse, you can see where childhood has gone. I mean, when I grew up in the south of the Netherlands, when I was, 10, 11, 12, on a Saturday, my mother used to say, make sure you're back by the time it goes dark. I didn't even have a watch with me. I had no idea where I went. I had no idea what I got up to. But by the time it got dark, or because I was a bit naughty, probably slightly later, I got back, right? That is now unthinkable. People would be reporting you if you brought your children up like that now. So, and of course, it all happens with the best of intentions, and we have the child's well-being and safeguarding and safety in mind. But from a child's experience, I quite enjoyed those wild days in the sense that I literally was learning in the wild, right?
Exactly, exploring, being independent, just
learning how to get up once you'd fallen over was really important, and not to fall over again. I don't know where you learn that now.
That's a good question. I mean, but I think, so you could overcome challenges. You learn to overcome challenges. But I think nowadays children, you don't think they're learning to overcome challenges now then?
Oh no, I think it's built into us to learn how to overcome challenges. I just wonder whether I don't know, but I wonder whether some of the challenges that we faced out in the woods and in the parks were perhaps more fun challenges than the ones that currently exist. And I wish that my youngsters, my three, at times I wish they'd had a bit more of that, and that I wouldn't have been quite so obsessed and helicoptery, which is what we become as parents, right? I think some of the challenges that our young people have now, the challenge of how to cope with social media and the pressures that brings, I can't even begin to understand what that's like, really. I understand it exists, but in that sense, this immediacy that exists around communication, contact, the way you've got to look, the way you've got to be responsive. So your social media behavior becomes a Pavlov's dog syndrome if you're not very careful, and they have that to overcome. And I think that in terms of well-being and mindset, that's much more difficult than what I did, because I was probably more physical, and how on earth am I going to get out of this tree? It was quite easy to get up. Is a different thing, isn't it? To how do I cope?
And you're moving around. You weren't probably thinking so much. You were just moving around, being present, active. Whereas now, I think we're with our thoughts, adults as well, a lot more.
Yeah,
we're a lot more stationary, aren't we?
I think it's all, in the end, it's all about balance, isn't it? But I think it feels to me, from observing kind of globally young people and talking to their kind of responsible adults, I think the balance is out of kilter at the moment, and we need to think about how we're going to put some of it back.
And what do you think, where do you think we can start, in your opinion?
I always I love this quote. Johan Cruyff, the Dutch footballer and manager, I'm a big fan, right? And even years after his death, still read the autobiography. I think most managers and leaders should read his autobiography, incidentally.
Oh, you have to put it in the comments later.
And I will. And in one of his books, he says that it is his view that playing outdoors should be a subject at school.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think we should regulate for it, but and regulate not as in how and when, but that it should happen. We should have outdoor time. And in the end, in the whole learning processes, the environment is a teacher.
Oh yeah, nature is the best teacher. Definitely.
And I think we should get back. We should deliberately get some of that back. But as long as you have the pressures of teach and test and inspections and performance management and all that nonsense around, quite frankly, we don't stand much of a chance. And I think we should have a mandatory percentage of school time should be spent out of school. And that could be how many youngsters in Dubai, how many 10-year-olds have been on a school visit to that amazing Museum of the Future, for example? Should be compulsory.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually.
So it's not just about playing in the woods, but it's also about how many have been to the opera, how many have. So let's list some experiences that we all think would be worthwhile having, would be educational, and would be fun.
And that's the key word that you said, experience. Yeah. It's about experiencing things, not just.
Yeah. And then invite the families to come along, because at the end of the day, you know what, the education of a child is not just the responsibility of the school. The school does it. Schools do a good job of it, but the child is far better educated if the education of the child is a partnership.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And the parents are part of that, so they should come on those visits and make time for it, find time. So yeah. I think we should have a list. We should have the kind of thing that says 10 things every child should have done by the time they're 7. And none of it is like, being able to add up or whatever. I mean, experiences. And then again by 14, and then again by 18 or whatever. And maybe we should keep doing it through life, 10 more experiences people should have between 89 and 99. They should all be able now to use their iPads for FaceTiming their families, and they can be taught by their 8-year-olds.
Wow! Yeah.
Right. So we need to think of this as something bigger and as something more important, I think.
No, I completely agree. I mean, it's just as important. Of course, we're talking about kids and children, kids and young adults, but adults as well. I think it's important. I think adults have forgotten as well how important it is to spend time outside doing simple things.
And I think that's a very interesting point, because what you have is, as old as I am, every time there was a new technological development, I was promised that my life would get easier. Every time they were wrong. Right? Remember, it was meant to make our lives easy, isn't it? Because at some point we would only be working 3 days per week, because the technology would do all the other things. I've never worked longer hours than I work now. Right? So we are, and this applies to children and applies to adults. I think this technology thing is kind of running ahead at 1,000 miles an hour, and our ability to cope with it is seriously lagging behind, because of course the parents should genuinely have the time and be given the time to be with their children on a visit to the Museum of the Future or all those other wonderful things that exist, right? And parents, in the end, we live, don't we? We're not just there to function. And that kind of the appreciation of what's around us and time for that will make us better people. And so technology so far in that respect has failed miserably, I think. I'd love a 4-day work. It would be an interesting thing. I was talking at an event in London not that long ago about this. It'd be an interesting thing if tomorrow we went to a 4-day working week. Yeah. And I wonder what the people would do with that extra day.
Yeah.
Or whether they would know what to do with that extra day.
It's funny, because even like sometimes I work way too much and then I have some time off and I just spend the time feeling guilty.
Yeah.
I mean,
so the balance, we've got the balance. And this is not saying everybody should become lazy, right? I just think we should get better at this. and we should, and the technology shouldn't make us work harder and longer. The technology is there to serve us and to make us better.
Yeah. But then don't you think everything comes with a cost? You know, there are lots of positive things about technology, but I do agree with you as well. But there's always going to be both two sides.
Some of that is, I disagree. Yes, but I also disagree. I think some of that is self-imposed. Example: many years ago, when I was education director in Wythenshawe, Marcus Rashford Land, and my office was at Manchester Airport, and my chair was a wonderful man called Jeff Muirhead, who was the group chief executive of Manchester Airport Group at the time. Brilliant, kind man. And he said to me, out of the kindness of his heart, he said, we're going to set you up at home. We're going to make sure that you've got internet connection at home, that you've got top computer at home, everything that you want to make you do your job as well as you can.
Okay.
And we're going to get you a company mobile phone. And I said to him at the time, Jeff, so does that mean if you ring me at midnight, I need to answer? And he didn't answer the question. He just laughed. And that's the question, isn't it? Because we are so, we can access our work so all the time that when the ping goes off, we feel that we have to respond. And we need to, as leaders, we need to have a culture. So I know a teacher here in Sheffield who's basically said that she does not want her staff to send any emails between close of play on Friday and opening up on Monday, unless it is extremely urgent, in which case you'd probably make a phone call anyway. And of course, people are, if they want to write emails over the weekend, they can.
But don't send them.
But they can't send them, right?
Yeah.
So, because what we've got to think is, in the technology thing, is every action we take will immediately impact on an X number of others. So we need to reconstruct our way of working in order to accommodate the well-being of the people we work with, and that implies in schools and children as well, right?
Yes. But I agree. But it's hard though, isn't it? Because especially as everything's on, lots of things are online, so we have different time zones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
think nothing is insurmountable, right? So the bottom line is, so there's a time difference between you and I of 4 hours, I think, is it?
Yeah.
You're 4 hours ahead, right?
Yeah.
So one, there are times that overlap, which is the first thing I do. Traditionally, the weekend was a problem with the Middle East because your weekend was different to ours. It was always the Sunday that became the overlap day, and that was my choice. I could have turned around and said to people, I'm not available, but I didn't.
That's true.
Right? So I have that choice, and they would have to respect that. So I think we just need to talk more, and in certain circumstances where those things can't be helped and literally are musts. I can't think of many, but there must be some. How about we pay people a bit more for doing time at unsociable hours? Right? We can all overcome it if we put our mind to the well-being of other people. We'll find solutions. We'll never be perfect, but we'll get quite close.
Right. You're right. I do think as well that we do have a responsibility to look after our well-being, don't we? As well, I think it's up to us first, because we have to learn skills to be able to say no, to have healthy boundaries, and that takes work and working on ourselves, doesn't it? And nobody, because we all have different boundaries. Like you said, you sometimes you wanted to work Sundays. Maybe somebody else would say never. I don't ever want to work Sundays.
But I think that comes down, and there's some interesting examples now, and some very bad examples coming out of the UK.
Yeah.
In the end, it's about trust. In the end, it's about trust. It's about trust and judgment, right? And I'll give you some very practical examples. The reason we have an inspection regime in the United Kingdom or in England called Ofsted is because the government didn't trust teachers. That's one of them, right? Now, the reason schools have very detailed and very strict behavior policies is because in a lot of cases, particularly at secondary, they don't trust the children or not all of the children. Right? And now at the moment, the big debate is working from post-COVID, working from home or not working from home. The big call for a return to the offices is immediately always linked to productivity. There's no evidence of that, by the way, right? But the assumption is made, if you work from home, you drink too many cups of tea and you're watching the cricket. Right? Now, there's a really interesting
you work
example.
more when you work from home.
There are times when I like it and there are times when I absolutely don't like it because it's actually quite lonely, right? So I'm always very happy to have the mix of going out. There are examples of companies where my eldest daughter is a senior accounts manager at, I can name them actually, Edelman, which is a very large global PR company. It's got a brilliant outfit. I know a few people there. And post COVID, they had a dialogue with their staff about what working would mean. And actually, if you ask most people who work, they will say, for a few days, at least for a few days in the week, I'd quite like to be in the office because I don't like to be lonely, and I like to meet my friends because a lot of my friends are at work, and then I have an after work social life, and there are things that we need to catch up, and then some things are done.
Exactly. And move. You're moving.
But also, so to a degree, I think I'm right in saying what Edelman did in the end was they said, well, we need everybody in an X number of days per week, and the rest it's your choice. And nobody's complained about the productivity. So what they do is they trust their employees, and the employees trust the employers.
Of course, yeah.
So much of that is about that, really.
I agree. Hi, Mohammed. Thank you so much. Any comments, please let us know. And we're running out of time. I can't believe how quickly the time's gone.
Word.
I know. Can you tell us about your OBE before we go?
Oh, my OBE. I was awarded my OBE in 2014 for services to children. And it's an honorary OBE because I'm not a British national. I'm a Dutch national. So you're given an honorary one. So that incidentally also means that normally you don't receive the award from a member of the royal family. So there are some kind of things with this. I received my reward from the Secretary of State for Education at Kidzania, London, which was quite cool because as it was related to children, it was the right thing. And the thing that touches me to this day most about the whole thing is that it wasn't a political award. So it wasn't some prime minister or whatever saying you're going to get this. It was an award that was applied for by my colleagues and peers and people I worked with.
Really?
So there is something really warm about knowing that other people think that you're good enough or that you deserve one of those, right?
Well, yeah, it's like total acceptance.
Yeah. So that's the part of it that I carry around with me, really, and that's really good.
Oh wow! No, you've said so many interesting points. Is there anything else like you want to say? Going back to all grown ups once children, but only few remember it.
No, just the next time I have to do this as well, right? Because I don't sit here as the fountain and all knowledge. You know, as a parent, trust me, as a parent, I make it up as I go along every day. And you use your judgment and your trust and your principles and your values, and then you don't go ever so far wrong. But it is worth reminding ourselves that we were that age and that it's not always easy and that it's sometimes quite hard and that kids feel that and that what social media does to our youngsters is like a magnifying glass, right? It makes you can see everything, and secondly it makes everything look bigger than it is, and they have to cope with that, and they need our help. And we can only help them if we put ourselves in their shoes. So that's it, really. Definitely,
no, yeah. So I guess the key word sounds like it's empathy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
empathy. Amazing.
And on that note, I will just say one thing. I every year I volunteer to work with Ed Kerwin on Empathy Week. And if you Google Empathy Week as a school, you see that you can join it. And Jasmine, I'll happily introduce you to Ed, so perhaps you can have a conversation with him at some point.
I would love to. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. So we're going to have to do another live in the future.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be good.
But thank you so much. And how can people contact you before we go?
So website, gergraus.com.
Brilliant. And if anybody wants to message Dr. Ger, they can do so directly, and me as well. And if you have any comments or questions, you can put them in the comments as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Ger, and thank you everybody listening. And I will see everybody next week, and I will see you very soon, Dr. Ger.
Yeah, you will. Bye-bye.